We saw that today with Kimi. There's another Rob Wilson driver right up there using these conditions just to use the basic fundamentals incredibly well. Now, that's not to say that in order to be quick, you have to be a Rob Wilson guy. Of course you don't. You can be born into being a great racing driver like Max Verstappen, like Lewis Hamilton, like Charles Leclerc. Although in Charles' case, you've got to say that if you have zero temperature, there's not much you can do. All you can do is watch, for a change, your teammate Sebastian Vettel go a little bit quicker than you. As I said yesterday, Sebastian picking up some nice confidence yesterday when he was able to throw the car around and actually enjoy himself a little bit, even though he didn't really want to look at the lap times. So that's Lance Stroll. That is why Lance Stroll today did the job. And he did the job in a way that was really, really impressive, because if you look at what he had done in Q2, to 53.3 in Q2, and the track was kind of evolving, but it wasn't comfortably evolving. And in Q3, under pressure, on his last lap, he did a 47.7. Now, Max did a 48.0, so he beat Max Verstappen by 0.3. This wasn't just a one-off lap, which would say to the world, wow, the Racing Point has grip and nobody else has. This was right down in Max Verstappen margin territory, and he beat Max by 0.3. Okay, of course, if Max got into the Racing Point, I'm sure he probably would have gone slightly quicker. But that isn't the point here, is it? The point is that under pressure in Q3, with stuff on the track, visibility terrible, Lance Stroll did his 47.7. And that is really impressive, I think. Particularly as Sergio Perez did a 49.3. And if you just take that alone, the difference between Lance and Sergio Perez, that is an incredible achievement, let alone beating Max to the pole. Alex Albon, P4, as I said yesterday, he got a lot of confidence, like Sebastian Vettel, throwing that car around in those greasy conditions. He suddenly felt much more relaxed as a racing driver. He looked more relaxed, more fluid as a racing driver. Very good result for him, 50.4 compared with Max's 48. Normally you'd say that's a huge margin, but given all the things that were going on today, I think that was a very, very good performance as well. Daniel Ricciardo, 51.5. When it all mattered, Daniel was out there in the Renault doing the job. Good on you, Daniel. And Lewis Hamilton, 52.5. When he went on to the intermediates, he had to stack behind Valtteri. His pit stop was a little bit delayed. I'm sure they didn't get those tyres correctly up to temperature. And as I say, I'd be interested to know what Lewis would have done had he stayed out on the wets. I think as soon as Mercedes saw the lap time from Sergio Perez on the intermediate, they thought, right, we've got to be on the intermediates. That was their reaction. Whereas, is the Mercedes on intermediates, given the time remaining, going to be as good as a Racing Point on the intermediates? I think from what we saw in FP3 this morning, I think there were grounds for saying, I don't think it would necessarily have been. And look at what Alex Albon did on wets, 50.4, and Lewis 52.5 on intermediates. So if Lewis had stayed on the wets, you could argue he probably would have been in the 49s, maybe the low 49s, and that might have put him P3 on the grid. Esteban Ocon, P7, he'd looked good all day in the other Renault. Really good performance from him. Kimi Raikkonen, 8th. Valtteri Bottas, rather disappointing, 9th. Again, very, very good yesterday, car control-wise, but when it mattered under pressure, a bit messy. And Antonio Giovinazzi, 10, to make it both Alfa Romeos through into Q3. Excellent day for them. On the flip side, McLaren chose to go out on intermediates at the beginning of Q2, and that kind of put them on the back foot immediately, and they didn't get through to Q3. So that's one of the reasons why you see both Alphas there. Another point that I think should be made is that quite a lot of drivers were complaining, particularly when the rain was really bad in Q1, of lack of visibility, of just not being able to see anything. Charles Leclerc was one, Kevin Magnussen was another, Daniel Kvyat. Interestingly, both Charles and Kevin are Bell helmet users, and I was under the impression that Bell had a really good wet visor system. I mean, that was one of the reasons Lewis Hamilton told Arai he was leaving Arai to go to Bell, because of their great visor system. And of course, every driver is in charge of his own helmet and how he does his visor. But I found it rather strange that, in this era of all the personnel they have and all the detail they have, and they have a helmet technician in just about every team now per driver, I found it very odd that they're still in this world of, well, we got a misting visor. You know, it seems so antiquated now. They haven't got on top of that problem. You would imagine, given those huge backpacks they've all got on the grid, the helmet technicians, that is. I know there's a spare helmet in there, but there's lots of other stuff as well. All that data and all that engineering around them, you would imagine by now they would have some sort of testing system where they can simulate a very hot, humid environment, put rain on it, simulate all the air being pumped out by a driver when he's wearing it with the mask on, and make sure the visor doesn't mist. I would have taken that for granted now in 2020 Formula One. So I found it rather incongruous that on the one hand we've got this really high-tech Formula One pit lane, and then you've got drivers like Charles Leclerc saying, I can't see anything, I can't see where I'm going. I thought it was great actually to see the sheer raw enthusiasm of Lance Stroll and the amount of criticism he's had recently for everything that happened really in Portugal, and then the COVID thing. He said it goes back to Mugello, it probably does. And then to come out and put that lap together, and then to be able to say, as he did, just kind of, off the cuff, well, one lap was ruined when Bottas spun in front of me. He would have loved saying that. So the pink Mercedes, as Zach Brown would like to call them, were brilliant today. And if you haven't seen the Zach Brown two-part interview, it's on this channel. Have a look at it after this. Were brilliant today in terms of the way they allowed the drivers to get temperature into the tyres in a sort of drivable way. It wasn't perfect by any means, but it was a lot better than most, probably every other team out there. The writing was on the wall, I think, for that in FP3. And Lance Stroll, under pressure, delivered a great lap to take the pole from Max Verstappen.